Okay, Mike.
Okay, I'll start sharing my screen. Hopefully this will work. There we go. Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, great. Okay. So I've got 15 minutes, I think. So my name is Mike Phillips. I'm a professor of interdisciplinary arts at the University of Plymouth. Not for long. I'm leaving at the end of July, but probably be emeritus. And I live in the Immersive Vision Theatre, the IVT, which is a Fulldome. It's 25-degree tilt. You can see here it's tiered seating. It takes about 35 people for various presentations. And I just thought I'd talk about the little bit of the history of this and why the thing that I'm really going to be talking about at the end of this exists and what sort of led to it. So let's see. Yes, this planetarium, or as it used to be called a planetarium, now it's more of an omniarium, in that we kind of left, well, we still partner with a lot of science stuff. We do interdisciplinary projects. But it was originally built here, as you can see, this old concrete structure in about 67. Had a nice starball, Zeiss starball in the middle. It was horizontal. You can still see the bad Plymouth plastering join where the tilt happened. But essentially, it's the same building with new gear in it. And it was set up to teach people about the stars, obviously, but in particular the naval officers around here. This is Plymouth, that has quite a notorious naval history, you know, Drake and all that, not good things. But of course, nobody, well, since about the 90s, nobody really looked up at the stars anymore. They've all got their GPS devices. So it kind of went out of fashion, other than for public displays and for our astronomy unit here at the university. And that's when I managed to sneak into it and start doing some cool stuff. But whilst I was doing that, it was run by this incredible guy called Percy Seymour, who was a little bit of a heretic in that he liked to mix astronomy with astrology. And here you can see some of the quotes about his publications, some of the ideas he has. Like, all I can say is that I have yet to meet another scientist that agrees with his views. That's from the Royal Astronomy Society. It's right up there with stuff like crop circles being made by extraterrestrials. Actually, a lot of the stuff he did talk about were extraterrestrials. And but this fantastic book I've got here, I don't know if you can still see me on the camera, but I have a copy of this book. There's quite a few of them on Amazon, actually. And they're this is the title here: Percy Seymour, The Paranormal Beyond Sensory Science. And in it, he created this beautiful kind of narrative between real astronomy, real kind of quantum physics, real kind of theories of scientific theories, and the idea of being able to jump in between spaces and times, and came up with a lot of philosophy about what ghosts are, what the paranormal is, which was sort of built on these rather dubious, built on real scientific discoveries, but using kind of rather dubious theory. And some of that theory, as you can see in that little spinning video there of the Earth moving through, or the sun moving through space and the Earth orbiting the sun, but everything's moving at thousands of miles per second. And the idea was that in this kind of confluence of histories, things could overlap. And that is really interestingly expressed in quite a lot of science fiction. Here you've got Deja Vu, Interstellar, Event Horizon, and Strange Things, where they use this analogy of folding space and time. And his theories are very similar to that. All of them involve a piece of paper, a pen, and making a sort of direct connection between points in space that are distributed across quite a lot of distance. And really, this is the sort of wonderful thing about full domes, is that they do blend these different kinds of truths. And you know, here's a really nice example from the Fantastic Four, shortly to be on your screens from Marvel, where Reed Richards enters this crossroads to infinity. And there you can see at the center of this crossroads stands Buckminster Fullerball, or as we know, a geodesic dome created in Jena. Is Micky there yet? Back in the 30s. And so these ideas about what the dome is, obviously from Arthur C. Clarke here, this thing's hollow, it goes on forever, and oh my God, it's full of stars. These places were all the different kinds of truths fit together. We call these places chronosynclastic infundibulum, which is the Kurt Vonnegut, Sirens of Titan, where space and time become this kind of malleable substance. And then, of course, Borges here with, yes, the only place on Earth where all places are seen from every angle, each standing clear without any confusion or blending, and that's the Aleph. So the dome I see is fitting into these kind of cultural kind of tropes. It binds them together. It connects ideas of science with ideas of personal and spiritual belief. And it is an incredible place that joins together work that can be explored at the quantum level or the nano level with the stuff that exists at the furthest edge of the known universe and beyond that. So this kind of transscalar space all sits within the full dome environment. And we've had quite a lot of interesting people come through this dome working with these kind of ideas. Neil Harbison at the top there, Mr. Cyborg, he's did a project with us. Adam Montandon was actually the student we had working with him whilst he was based in Dartington, which is just up the road from Plymouth. And he created the eyeborg, which he had grafted onto the back of his head, and it translates color into sound. You may have seen the work he's done with that. It was quite a while ago now, but it was based around the work that was going on in visualizations of data inside this dome. Isabella Bayer, who's now working in Germany and building full dome environments. You've probably heard of Donna Cox and her amazing visualizations that she does in Urbana-Champaign with really high-end supercomputer systems. Shah Davis with her really classic kind of work with Osmos and FMAir in these kind of virtual environments. And Dave McGonville, all of these were students of the Planetary Collegium, which was, again, located here in Plymouth, run by Roy Ascott. And I had the great pleasure of working with him for about 25 years, I think it was, building these kind of, these relationships between disciplines, creating new works which could make interventions into those kind of spaces. And as well as that, more recent kind of endeavors like Fulldome UK was born here. This it's a festival, praise be to Jena and the work that Micky's always done, and we followed suit with Fulldome UK. 2010, it was founded here in IBT, quite a small place, so we moved on to Think Tank up in Birmingham, and then the NSC, National Space Centre up in Leicester. Back here to Plymouth for the Market Hall that was developed here in 2021, I think, and now at Cult VR in Cardiff. Also, the kind of inspiration for the Full Dome was that I managed to get the CEO of Real Ideas to visit Montreal to go to SAT, Society of Art and Technology, where they have the Mecca of all domes. And she instantly inspired by that and managed to build a £7 million building here in Plymouth, which is a kind of more contemporary twin of SAT. It only uses 2 rather than, was it 9 they have at SAT? I can't remember. So it uses 2 fisheye, blended fisheyes. The whole system developed by Guy Nova, who also happened to be the kind of main drivers behind Fulldome UK. A lot of the work we're doing here is interdisciplinary with earth sciences people. We're looking at environmental data, visualizing that in the dome, building networks with Exeter University and Falmouth University, and back in 21, we also had the Southwest Corridor Technology Network, which linked University of West of England, Barspar, Falmouth, us, with several providers like the Watershed and Collider, all working on sort of really contemporary ideas of automation, immersion, and the way data can be blended through all of those things. So there's the kind of, you know, those are the sort of things that we've been doing for a while in this space. But we also use it as a teaching space to develop new kinds of tools, new kinds of ideas. There's a little inflatable thing I was doing at the Angewand with Martin Kusch and Ruth Schnell in Vienna. Have Dome will travel to our mocap system that we have here as well. And some of the work we've been doing has been really quite playful. It involves everything from you know, nanotech stuff to kind of LiDAR scanning stuff to the kind of stuff that you might do with an overhead projector and multiple projectors just being held and people running around them. You can see down here the system that we have. It's quite contemporary. It uses really quite interesting dual fisheye lenses, two projection systems, which are liquid. Well, they're actually cooled because all the energy takes place in the rack in the server room, and then liquid pipes bring the light through to the projection themselves, so they're really quiet. And at the core of that is Screenberry, which is an amazing media server that we use, and many others are using. Based in Ukraine, Screenberry do some incredible work facilitating not just domes, but multi-screen stuff. And out of that, we do a lot of digital stuff, less so in terms of 360 video, and quite a lot of things using Unreal. This is LiDAR scanning environmental stuff, you know, for heritage things. Great, really high res, very playable, lots of kind of fun can be had with that, but it's also rather kind of boring because that's what LiDAR scanners do, and this is what Unreal does. The stuff we've been doing, which has been slightly more, I think, interesting, has been facilitating the use of data, collecting data, and then using it within the Fulldome environment. This was a building that we rigged up to tap into in real time to the BMS system to generate kind of visualizations and sonifications of data within that building. Other projects where we've been using domes to capture data from the environment and from communities and to share that and make it playful and locate it in their spaces, but also back here in the dome environment. To work that we did here, this is what some stuff that we did a little while ago now at SAT, which used devices for sort of like controllers, but within the 3D space. So we had multi-user access to the environment that people are in, and they can control that with these devices, a kind of cluster of Android and Arduino configurations. Some more recent stuff we've been doing, this is some work with using AI to you know, direct control of a touch designer, using AI to generate image content, in this case from one of our PhD students called Coda, where he's capturing theta waves, etc., and using those through to the dome. The Includiverse, which is the UKRI-funded project, which is really quite interesting. It simply takes subtitles from the server and allows you to see that within VR glasses. So if you have a hearing impairment, you can see the text from, you know, in 3D space in your eyes using these simple glasses. So what we've been doing, networking domes together. This is essentially a multi-user Unreal game, but the people in it are at different locations, and the game client is being played in the dome, and then it allows people to build things in that space. So completely distributed. In this case, we were working with students in China, working with our students online, and then manifesting those things in real time in the dome. And this has led us to this kind of idea of thinking about the Internet of Domes. And part of this mission I'm on at the moment with a small AHRC impact grant is to revisit all of these different toys and tools and bits of code and hardware and pull them together and make them more readily available. And the idea is that we'll be able to create a bunch of tools which we can then insert into traditional planetariums, the kind of planetariums that run Fulldome festivals, to allow them with, it is quite difficult if you're running a Fulldome festival. You basically have to take over a planetarium that is usually in a science center and usually runs through audiences kind of every hour, and then you have to destroy it with a bunch of artists coming in. And so this would allow, I think, with these tools, for very artists to access the tools in the first place, and then to produce content which would be of a real-time nature into the planetarium without really interrupting the configuration of those spaces. So far, I mean, we've only been doing this really for a month now. We've got a fantastic research assistant working with me, Emma Freeman, who's already gone through our GitHub, the IDAC GitHub, and kind of cleaned it all up. Loads of junk just being thrown up there. She's already built a whole load of processing things you can play with. We had to rebuild an OSC server to get the data from the Android app. She's also just this morning built a new camera rig for Unity. And then here you can see an app that she's just made, which allows you to take real-time data positioning of your Android watch and the app. It took us a month to build the app in 2016, and she built this in one morning. It's all up there to play with. And also tapping into things like LoRaWAN networks. So really, I'm ending here. The work that we're doing is to really re-envision the work that Buckminster Fuller was talking about, where he wanted to make the dome a place that was dynamically viewable and picturable and radioable to all the world. So by linking domes together through these simple technologies, it creates greater access and less trauma if you happen to run a dome. Thank you very much.
Can you hear me well? Yes, no? No? Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. It was very interesting. So let's see if at the end we have a question or some other comments. But now let me go through Dennis. Dennis, if you want to introduce yourself, or I can read a little bit about you.
Oh, I'm fine. I'd like to talk just a little bit about my experience, and then answer some questions or show some images which I have available. So I am Dennis Miller. I am living in the Northeast of the US, and my background as a composer led me to graduate school and then on to a 40-year job in Boston, where I had a very supportive department. My university was very much interested in new ventures, and cross-disciplinary ventures was an important aspect of the work they wanted us all to do. So I became very interested in adding a media, a new element, a medium to my compositions. And I became very interested in visual arts early on. And during each of several sabbaticals, I studied visual art. I took courses at local universities. I took some private mentoring with an animator in Canada named Jean Detou, whose work I liked very much. And gradually I developed some skills that I felt were, worth presenting to the world. And so I began to create my own animations with my music. And this was well before I had ever heard the word visual music. I had no idea that there was such a thing. I just thought it was quite natural to have two time-based media collaborate. So, music and images made perfect sense to me. And I learned some tools, some software that was very helpful for this sort of venture, and began to create mixed media works back in the early 2000s. So for about 20 years, this was the main thrust of my compositions, and there were quite a few outlets for this work, far more than for original music compositions. So I found some success, you know, in the community of galleries and festivals and, you know, presenting at conferences and things. And, you know, it just seemed to be a very accessible idea to combine the media. And then, you know, of course, along the way, I became quite familiar with the history of visual music, which I date back, a couple of thousand years, if you will. You know, people interested in the relationship between sound and color, Pythagoras, of course, and then on to into the 17th, 18th century, Newton, and, you know, there's just a vast history there. And a lot of my research and study came as a result of teaching courses on visual music that were populated by both composers and art students. And, you know, it seemed to be something that the kids were very much interested in. So I just became further involved with the history of the subject. And gradually in 2004, we had a visual music marathon in Boston where we presented 120 fine art animations with music, or visual music, you could say, in a day-long festival. It was truly a marathon. I did all the projections and all the, you know, curation and everything. And then we did it again in New York in 2008. And that was sort of the legacy that I felt I was involved with in terms of presenting this work to the public. I think much of it is still online, and we published a booklet that we sent to universities and libraries all around the world. And so this was a big event, you know, going back 20 years ago. I continued to work in the medium or the genre. We can describe it either way, I think, for another 10 years or so, until about the early 2020s, where I fell into the AI world, and using AI for generating images, you know, just accelerated the pace of my my sketching and my development, my workflow, we could say, because it was such a fast development platform. But of course, AI has tremendous limitations in terms of imagery per se. And I think we're seeing, you know, right now some of the more interesting developments just starting. You know, the text to video idea is interesting, but of course it's very limited to 5 or 10 seconds of output at this point. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next decade or so. And I hope to be involved with that, although, you know, for the most part, I don't stay as close or as rigid in terms of the types of connections I once made between sound and image, which I've, you know, sort of let go, and I just work in a more free environment at this point. But in any case, I think there are quite a few interesting developments to be explored, and I'll show a few images now and some of the ideas I have in terms of the types of things, the types of relationships between sound and image that I've been interested in. And we could jump over to that screen in a minute if there aren't any questions or issues at this point. Shall I proceed with that then? Share my screen? Sound good? Okay, well, I'll take that as a yes. All right. If somebody can remind me the screen sharing, it's down here somewhere, right? Oh, okay, great.
Para compartilhar la imagen.
Ele compartilha, né? Ele compartilha a apresentação dele.
Sí, pero no encuentra dónde está.
No Meet, aqui, ó. Essa seta aqui, o computador com a seta.
Okay. Did you find the button to share the screen?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Let me get the right screen up here. And has anyone done sort of a historical overview of visual music, or is that something that most of the participants will be familiar with?
Yes, I was doing it.
You were doing this.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Just want to check because I've got these two different.
But you can take your own approach if you want.
Well, yeah, I had a. I've got. I think this might be helpful for some of the viewers, and I'll spend a little time on this and do some of my own stuff. But what I found very interesting when I had researched the topic is how far back this idea of, relationship between sound and image is something that, we know literally goes back many, many years. One of the books that I first looked at had a lot of terms that I think are going to be very familiar to most of the participants. Things like phrasing and variations and chromatic harmony. And of course, these are terms that any musician would be familiar with, but they all came from a book on modern art by Sam Hunter. It's sort of a foundations book for most art students. And it's just interesting to note the similarity of terminology between music and art, visual art. And this is just a way to introduce the topic of, the relationship between these two media. Historically, there have been attempts to relate color and sound for millennia, in fact. But if you notice, the wavelength of color is in nanometers, and this is a billionth of a meter, whereas the wavelength of sound is in feet. Middle C, for example, is actually a wavelength that is over 2 feet long, as opposed to the nanometers of the color red, for example. But of course, yes.
Sorry, you're not sharing the screen.
You're not sharing the screen? Oh, this is horrible. Okay, sorry. I thought we were all set here.
Is there arrow pointing up?
Let me see where the arrow's underneath this window,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes, right, that one.
No centro da parte de baixo aqui, né?
Yes, and at the center, in the lower part, in the bottom,
Yeah,
there is a screen with an arrow pointing up.
yeah. I just I enabled that a second ago, but you still don't see.
No, not yet.
Don't see anything, huh? Okay,
Not
very
yet.
sorry. I could
Right.
Escolhe qual é a janela que tem, né?
Como?
Quando ele
Yeah.
escolhe qual é a janela.
See. So once you click there, you should see
Yeah.
a number of screens probably, and you need to choose the screen to share.
Yeah, I'm just not seeing.
Aí ele está compartilhando a tela dele.
Ah,
Pode
okay.
escolher uma janela do.
Now we have a video feedback because you're
Yes,
sharing the
yeah, it's quite interesting, but not appropriate, I'm afraid. I'm sorry. Do you want to? No, I'm not quite sure. I'm on the laptop here and I don't see much at the bottom of the window, I'm afraid.
Just, if you want to try once again, I mean, just stop it, share the
Yeah.
screen and choose only the window that you want to share, not the full window.
Okay,
Not the full desktop, but just the window you want to share.
okay. All right. So what do you see now? Anything?
Not yet.
Nothing?
No.
Yeah, I'm really sorry here. I had gotten this earlier, but presentation is starting. Nothing, huh?
No, nothing happened.
É que ele tem que estar com a janela aberta.
Como?
Se ele minimizar, vai subir, né?
If you minimize your screen, maybe you will see because once you click the share screen, you should see the several windows you have open.
Of course,
And you
yeah.
and you should.
Yeah,
only choose-
I'm clicking the icon, but I'm afraid I don't know why it's not reacting. It's it implies I'm sharing. In fact, it seems to because it's grayed out now. And all right, I don't want to waste time. Would you like to continue with the next presenter, and I'll try to sort this and move to a different machine, perhaps?
Yes, maybe that could be a good idea.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yes, please. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Okay, so we jump to Joseph then. Okay. So Joseph, welcome.
Hello.
Joseph has been also like in several editions of the Understanding Visual Music before. So you want me to introduce you, or you want to do it yourself?
I'm happy to, really. I think, yeah, I might as well. I mean, the whole thing's a bit of an introduction, so.
Welcome.
Yes, I think
thank you.
Was it the first one in Buenos Aires I was at? The first Understanding Visual Music, I think it maybe was. But I've been to that one, and at least one in Brazil, so I'm quite familiar with the Understanding Visual Music story. And I guess that's what brought me into this, is that I have been, through most of my career, wanting to understand visual music. I'm not sure we've got there yet, but there we go. So yeah, to introduce myself a bit, I am Joseph Hyde. I am based in Bath, or near Bath in the UK, which by American standards, North or South American standards, is very, very close to where Mike is, actually just down the road in Plymouth. Although, Mike, I suspect the last time I saw you was in Brazil, possibly, which is ridiculous. I don't know. But yeah, I've been based in Bath Spa University, which is in Bath. I'm actually slightly ahead of you, Mike. I have already left. I didn't even wait to retirement. I went for a voluntary severance a few years ago, but I did manage to get them to give me an emeritus title, which is nice. So I am still a professor, just about. But since then, I've been freelancing, doing kind of much the same sort of stuff, which I'll perhaps come to at the end. But yeah, I'll just talk for a bit, and then I haven't got all that much to show, but I'll just show a little bit, and then maybe some questions after that. So I first came to. I'm a musician, really. That should be my starting point. I grew up doing. That's what I wanted to do with my life, and I did my all my university years were studying music exclusively, nothing visual at all. But right at the end of my PhD, which I did at the University of Birmingham, working with a group called BEAST, which is Birmingham Electroacoustic Sound Theatre, although I suspect they thought of the name first and then decided what it stood for afterwards. But yeah, I did my PhD there, and their approach is acousmatic music, which I won't go into in a huge amount of depth because it would be at least as long a thing as understanding visual music. But really, the critical part of acousmatic music is that you don't see anything. That's actually what the term acousmatic refers to, is a blank screen and nothing. It's all for the ears, and you totally kind of ignore your visual sense. When you finish your PhD at the University of Birmingham, you tend to get invited to you get a commission, which is quite nice, for their concert series, and that's kind of your leaving parting gesture. And I thought, basically, just to annoy John T. Harrison, who was my tutor, I would do visuals, and just to really like throw this whole thing. And it was really only with that sort of slightly kind of annoying kind of motivation that I got into it. And I totally thought that I'd invented it as well. I thought at the time, well, this idea of I'm going to make it like a big 15-minute electroacoustic piece with visuals, that's like really, no one's ever done that before. And of course, as most of us know in this room or on this call, I absolutely didn't. And as Dennis said, I was only 2,000 years after the idea was first kind of floated around. And so since then, I've kind of gradually worked backwards, really, through this history of visual music and become very interested in it, actually. Something that I've actually been doing quite a lot of writing since leaving university. And one of the things that I've just written, which hasn't been published yet, is for a book on rethinking the history of music technology with a kind of, I guess, with a sort of decolonialization kind of agenda and perhaps, you know, moving away from a lot of the figureheads in music tend to be male, white, all that. And I had an idea for that. Well, actually, an awful lot of the ideas for music and for music technology actually came from outside of music, came perhaps from cinema or from visual arts or from the sciences and so on. And that if you take that approach, then automatically you kind of diversify what you're looking at. So yeah, I found that studying visual music has been a really good way of changing my understanding of music as well, which is yeah, it's that's partly why it's become my kind of key research interest. So while I was still at Bath Spa, I ran my own series, a little bit like Understanding Visual Music, I think, called Seeing Sound. And this was really an attempt to bring together people around this sort of dialogue of visual music. But what I really wanted to do is to make it not exclusively academic. So it was really equally designed for practitioners as it was for academics and writers. So I'll share my screen at this point if I can. I think, is that the one I wanted to share? No, that's an infinity mirror. That's not good, is it? Okay. That's fine. I will get there in a minute, don't worry. You'd think we'd have all got used to it. I have found that nearly everyone uses Teams these days, so I'm familiar with that, but I've forgotten how to use. There we go. So yeah, hopefully you can see my screen now. And this is the Seeing Sound website. As you can see from this, we ran for just over 10 years, really, from 2009 to 2020. I haven't completely let go of the idea that there might be more Seeing Sounds, but I have nearly let go of that idea, I think, now. We've had various sort of plans since 2020. The most promising has been to do it at SAT, actually, that Mike referred to. They're quite interested, and we have quite a strong Montreal connection generally. I suppose anyone involved in visual music or the audiovisual side of things tends to get connected with Montreal. It seems to be one of the key centers for this work, really. But yeah, Miriam Boucher is, I think, has been to pretty much every single Seeing Sound and is now an academic working at the University of Montreal. And she's been talking about resurrecting it, but whether she will or not, I don't know. But regardless, I think the history of Seeing Sound and the sort of repository we have through the website is still quite useful, really. And what I was pleased with this is that we managed to sort of bring together some of the key figures of this field. So in 2011, we had Cindy Kiefer, the director of the Centre for Visual Music, was our keynote speaker. But in 2013, we had Larry Cuba, who's probably the other key figure from the sort of Californian history of visual music. And Dennis will certainly know this, but I think lots of people in that world will know that these two people, let's say, don't quite see eye to eye. So that's why we didn't invite them the same year, but we got them for subsequent years. And with Larry Cuba, we managed to do a very nice presentation of his, it should be in here, I think. No, I can't find it, but we did one of his early, I've actually forgotten the name of the work, which is really annoying, but one of the very first of his computer animations, we did a big immersive version of that. Not quite Fulldome, Mike, but it was still pretty interesting. Other things that we've done over the years, in 2014, we were part of the McLaren, the musician event, which was for his centenary, I guess. And we did a sort of away from home event at the Watershed as part of their short film festival, and some really nice events around McLaren, some very rare screenings of very rare works of his, some very interesting experts on his kind of legacy came to talk. And then in 2020, just to sort of skip ahead a bit, we did a COVID edition, like you do. And yeah, the messing about with trying to share screens brought back some memories of that, I have to say, because back then we really weren't very good at it. And I still have some kind of post-traumatic trauma of some of our panel discussions there. One of them, the actual chair of the panel ended up not at home. She was in her car and she was doing the call from her phone with a sick cat. And her reception kept coming and going. Anyway, it was very, I think it's actually on the site somewhere. I think there's actually a recording of that call, which is probably worth watching just for amusement value. But we had some very interesting, because we were able to bring people from around the world, I suppose, a bit like this. We had some very interesting panelists, people like Robert Henke, Kelly Snook. I don't know if you know Kelly Snook. She's a big part of the kind of arts science scene, I guess. She used to work at NASA, now does some very interesting kind of visualization or sonification kind of projects. Yeah, I mentioned Robert Henke talking about his work with lasers and old computers. Lots of interesting people. And yeah, hopefully you can see the address, seeingsound.co.uk. It's kind of worth a look, really. In my own work, I've been moving in. Well, firstly, I've carried on writing, actually. So I wrote the article I just mentioned, but I've also become part of a kind of group involved in this book to start with. It's called Live Visuals, History, Theory and Practice, with Steve Gibson, Stefan Arizona, Donald Leishman and Atao Tanaka. I wrote a couple of bits for this, but there's now a follow-up volume, which I'm actually co-editing. And this is going to be called Audio Visualism, Reframing Image Relationships Between Sound and Image. And I quite like this term, audio visualism. It actually came up at the book launch of this book. A chap called Matt Black was there. I don't know if his name means anything to any of you. Certainly Mike was nodding. In the UK, he's quite well known, really. He is sort of came to prominence in the 90s and 80s, I suppose, 80s and 90s, 2000s, as a musician with a group called Cold Cut, who sort of brought instrumental hip hop to the UK, I guess, and into that sort of trip hop era. But they were also very pioneering in the use of visuals, all sorts of visuals, both sort of music videos, but they did some very nice early interactive work on CD-ROMs and that kind of thing. And he runs a record label called Ninja Tune that are very active on this. Anyway, he was there, and he's a very interesting guy. And he said, well, I think we were literally talking about what we call this and talking about visual music. And he said, oh, well, yeah, I call it audio visualism. And we thought, actually, that's pretty good. So that's why we're using that for our book now. And I think that might be, yeah, another. I mean, one thing I've found with the history of visual music is it becomes a little bit political if you're not careful, slightly around some of the figures I've been talking about. And so sometimes it's quite nice to call it something else. Anyway, in my own work, I have moved into slightly more kind of immersive fields. So maybe I'll need to talk to you, Mike, at some point about doing a dome thing. But what I've been doing, I've been this is, I'll just play a very quick piece of this. This isn't for dome. This is for a cyclorama, basically for 5 projectors around a circular space, which I've done at a couple of places now. There seem to be a few of these spaces around alongside domes. This is one at the University of Greenwich in the Bathway Theatre. And this is from not a 360 but a 180 degree camera, which is obviously designed to be unwrapped into a movie that you would navigate around. But I decided, because of the material and so on, it actually looks quite nice in its circular form. So I'll just play you a little bit of this. I don't know how well it'll come across on the call. Is that actually showing? No.
See.
Okay. Well, that's strange. Yeah, it only works if it's not in full screen for some reason. very short little bits. But I should say that what brought me into that still was the sound, in fact. So the sound came first. It was a sound-only piece for ambisonic sound. So for a dome configuration of speakers. Any one of you know ambisonics know that it's for an arbitrary number of speakers. It can be decoded to any number, but it'd be typically in the sort of 20s or 30s number of speakers. And then I gradually developed this sort of visual counterpart to that, for which this circular format seemed to be kind of ideal, really. And the other thing I've been doing, which was completely unexpected, which is just sort of the sort of thing that happens when you step outside academia and need to earn a living, is I seem to have moved into working with drones, with drone shows, just because I found a bit of work, really. So I worked with a company called Celestial that are based in this area, through a grant. It was actually an Innovate UK grant, but it was through something called My World, developing interactive ways of doing drone shows. So rather than kind of pre-programmed, we can make them interact with performers, and so on. That project's now finished, but I'm now working with a number of other companies on new ways of doing drone shows, essentially, because they're very limited at present. It's a bit like AI, you know, it's very much in its infancy. Actually, I haven't been to a single drone show that I've liked yet. They tend to be quite boring, if you ask me. But my aim is to try and do an interesting one, and hopefully we will. I think I'll probably leave it there and stop sharing, and see if there's any questions.
¿Alguna pregunta? Okay. No, por ahora. No, we can leave it to the end if there are any. But thank you so much, Joseph. I don't know if we can complete the presentation of Dennis, if you're ready, before to go to Micky.
Okay, I'm gonna let's jump back. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll give it another try. I've got a different setup here. I've got a share screen button, share window, share this window, and share my screen. And then, can you see anything?
Yes, but not your images. I mean, it's just your desktop.
You don't see the slide?
No.
Okay, I'm very sorry. I don't know what is the issue.
It looks like you are sharing the full desktop again, and not the screen you want to share.
Okay, I clicked exactly the button that says share window.
Yes. Yeah, that's fine.
But are you sharing the Google Meet, the Google Meet window, maybe, as opposed to the one you want?
Sai e na hora de entrar.
Yes, you need to exit it and then try again sharing it. But
Okay.
I mean, choosing the exact window you want to share, not the other one, not a general one, just the window you want to share.
Right.
E essa já está aberta, né? Não pode estar pequena.
No puede estar minimizado. Yes, and that window you choose must be open, cannot be minimized.
Okay, stop sharing. The window is open, and this.
Recién casi abría. Me pareció que iba a abrir.
Não, ele saiu, né? Vamos ver se liga agora. Ele vai deixar aberta lá e tem que compartilhar.
You're frozen now? No. Your email.
Okay. Allow.
Try.
I've got share window, share screen, and you
Share.
in the window. Yes.
Share window.
Yes, and then it says share this window, and it says you are presenting.
Yes, we see that.
Yes.
Ele pega a tela inteira, ele está escolhendo a tela inteira.
Just
Yes,
stop. Stop.
we are seeing the full screen again, but
Yeah.
not the specific window you want to share.
Okay, but if I share this window, it is the window of the presenters, right?
Now,
So how do I get?
Window? You want to share? Is it the PowerPoint or?
It's a keynote.
Yeah, you want to share the keynote window.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you see it?
now, yes, okay, good.
You can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, bravo. Okay, I'll finish my little history with only one slide pointing out that many people have attempted to correlate sound and image, as I said a few moments ago. But what I find fascinating is how many different correlations have existed over the last hundreds of years, from Newton on through the 20th century, and I'm sure beyond. But this little graph here shows you all the different correlations among the different scientists and such who have tried to do this. So with that said, I will move to my own work, and we can discuss this a little bit. I can show some of the images here. The very first idea I had about correlating sound and image in my own work was to be very rigid in the types of connections, types of relationships. Again, this was before I had any idea that the genre had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, let's say. So I took the musical ideas and applied them to the visual imagery. Some of these are very obvious. Some of these are very literal. In fact, most of this was very literal. And it was my first attempt. It was 20 some years ago. And I said, why can't I develop a visual motive? What does transposition mean? What would it mean to have counterpoint? And I just took these ideas as quite literal and applied them to a visual motive, which is a very simple cue, because I had just started to look into imagery at this point. And it's sort of interesting because this was the very first image I used as my visual theme. And then within about 5 or 6 years, I had expanded my visual repertory, let's say, and was working with hand-drawn imagery. And this became the main theme, the main visual motive for work from a later point. But in those very first works, I was just developing, I was manipulating the visual imagery alongside the musical imagery. And so something very literal came out, and it looks like this.
Image. You need to go to the next. We are seeing still seeing the different the color scale.
You don't see color?
Yeah, we see the color scale, but if you want to share another screen, I don't know which one you want to share. You are
Okay.
we are still seeing slide number 12.
Okay, so all right. I thought we had moved to okay, so all right. So everything has to change when
No, we
Yes.
lost. Okay.
yeah.
Now it's
Oh, no, I understand. I switched windows, so it went away. Okay, so the point here is that I took a very simple idea of literally manipulating the imagery in the same way that I was manipulating the music from very basic compositional ideas like motivic development, modulation, etc. And then I took a visual image of this little cube and applied these manipulations, these compositional tools to the visual image, and came up with something like this. So the music motif is associated with the visual, and they will develop simultaneously.
If there is sound,
There should be.
well, we only have the images.
Is there a separate share sound? I didn't see a separate share sound.
No PowerPoint.
No.
But
Tem que estar online, né? Porque senão ele vai ter que procurar.
I think you will need to deal with the images alone.
O Meet é complicado.
Por eso.
okay, well then I'm out of luck. I'm very familiar with Zoom, but not so much with the Google. So
I know we were trying to. I prefer Zoom too, but in this
Yeah.
university we only
I'm
can
sorry.
use.
no, no hard feelings. I'm just not sure what to do because I don't see the spot where I would normally share sound. Does anyone know that button? Which
I think it's a separate thing. I think it's like a preference we used to use Google. I think it might be that little arrow towards the by the microphone. If you click on that.
Ele teria que ir no microfone e mudar.
Eso le está diciendo Joe.
Yeah, sure, actually.
Y en el micrófono lo cambia.
E puxar o sistema, né?
Okay, so go to, like Joseph is proposing. I mean, go to the microphone
yes,
button.
yes,
And you should.
Mas não quer dizer que vai funcionar, é complicado.
no, there's nothing there. There are no settings at that microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
É complicado, ele não vai conseguir.
No. Okay. So we need to deal with the images alone. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, that's okay. Yeah. So what you would hear is a musical motif and a visual motif in synchronized development, and all of the characteristics of the cube are changing while the musical motif is also transforming and developing. And that was a very literal idea, very simple-minded, one might say, but it was somewhat successful. And at that point, I was pleased. It was the very first attempt, and so be it. You know, I tried for many years to find a collaborator, someone in my university or someone outside the community who would be interested. And my first experience was with a colleague who was indeed an animator. And he gave me this 15-second clip of a little tower growing in the desert. We called it the Tower of Babel. And I wrote music for that first 15 seconds. And then I said, okay, what's next? And he said, oh, no, that's it. That's the piece. And I said, 15 seconds is not a piece. That's a sketch. That's a motif. But, he was an animator who had no idea how to expand a composition into take a motif and develop it. And all of a sudden, 3, 4, 5 minutes later, you've got a piece. And I just realized that, there aren't a lot of people outside of the music community who deal with form and, development the way we do. I mean, it's very unique to our field to take an idea and develop it. I mean, of course, a novelist will do something similar, but in the visual realm, not so common. And I just realized that I have to do this myself, and I have to learn the software, and I have to study visual art because I am in no way an artist by birth, and so a visual artist. And so, the simple imagery that I got in this particular piece was fine for starters, but obviously the big challenge was to pursue the visual side. And again, at that point, intensive self-study and study in universities around my area during my sabbatical, and private mentor were the ways that I proceeded to expand my visual language. I'll just show you some ideas then, because the pieces won't make a lot of sense without the sound. But a few years later, I thought, what if I create a visual composition first and then score it with music? And that worked very well for a piece called Circles and Rounds from the mid 2000s, where I created this composition, a visual composition using a very simple sort of motif in the imagery. And I developed it into a 4-movement suite. I mean, all I could think of was the form of the suite, which had, of course, contrasting tempo and some similarity among the imagery, because a suite always has some connections among the movements. And so this was the idea that I pursued for the next piece, which was called Circles and Rounds. And it worked out quite well because the piece had a natural flow to it, and it, sort of came back at the end, what we had seen at the beginning. And this is the idea that was used for the main theme in the imagery. And again, you won't hear the music, but it was quite developed in terms of the visual language. And I was very happy with that moving forward. The next piece was even more involved visually. It was called White Noise. And I really pursued a lot of different ideas in this one, including different sorts of mapping, taking a texture and applying it to a surface. There's texture mapping, there's bump mapping. These sorts of things have a very good implementation in a program called Cinema 4D, which I used for about 10 years to do my visuals. And in terms of the mapping, the idea was that you can displace an object, like a primitive object, like a sphere or a cube or a plane, with a pre-existing bitmap image. And the idea here was to, just to find ways to transform the basic elements of that the software provided. And you can do this in both the 2D and 3D. So here is a simple plane that was created using the software. And then I took an external bitmap image and applied it to the surface to deform it. And I got this image. And again, another example is to take, again, the same sort of simple, basic object, which is called a plane, and then transform it using an external image. And so these are all examples of this sort of displacement mapping that I did with the software. And in the 3 dimensions, you can also take an object, sort of a conical pyramid idea, and transform it using a very noisy image. And that's what we see here. These sorts of examples all include this sort of idea. Okay, so then if I can show some of this, I'll show you how this looks in the 3 dimensions, but you won't see it, you won't hear the music, which again, I'm sorry, but this is the idea of the 3D, of the displacement using the external idea. And an object can become very complex and very detailed using this idea. And that will be what you're seeing here. The piece is called White Noise, both because of the sound and the image. And that was the main concept I was working with, is finding ways to displace these simple objects with noisy elements, and then of course use white noise as the main source for the music. So moving forward, I started to expand my visual language using some tools that were more associated with physics and engineering. For example, fluid dynamics and particle systems. And what fascinated me about these two really engineering applications was that they had, they had implementations in both image and sound. I mean, for fluid dynamics, one can think of physical modeling. And of course, for particle systems, you can think of particle systems. And so the fun thing here was to try to use these ideas, these techniques, in both the sound and the image. And again, I turned to Cinema 4D as a way to do this. Well, again, you won't hear the music. I won't pursue that. But just to very briefly give you an idea here, you know, fluid dynamics is about creating things like smoke and fuel and clouds and such. And, you know, that worked really well for both the musical ideas of the sound of these things sloshing around in big containers was a fun way to implement that in music. And in terms of the particle systems, well, you can, I'll show you a couple of the little visuals for the fluid dynamics. This is a fun one. So I took some motion capture data here and took the little guy into the software and basically mapped on a smoke texture that moved with the object, which was just sort of sticks and bones when I first got it. And these things, a lot of these things were just sketches, but they led to imagery that was used in different movies of mine, different films of mine, which again, you won't get to hear much. The particle systems also had tremendous applications for music. We're all familiar with, you know, granular synthesis and such. And in Cinema 4D, these things were very easy to implement visually. And of course, I was already familiar with the musical applications of granular synthesis and such. And here's another little example of the particle systems in visual realm. So gradually, I expanded the visual language and the tools that I was able to employ, and you know, apply those into various applications, often with a musical corollary. But I also feel that, you know, the music and the imagery many times should just accompany, you know, they should stand alone. I think it was Fischinger who once said, you know, the relationship between sound and image must change. It cannot be locked together. That certainly never appealed to me, to just simply lock the two forms together. But, you know, the sound and the image are like a river and a path that goes along the river. And sometimes they move together in synchrony, and sometimes they move apart, and then they come back together. And that to me is sort of the core of my thinking about visual music, is that, you know, the relationship between the sound and the image is the key issue I'm trying to address in my work. And I feel that I've been able to take different approaches, sometimes writing the music first completely and then adding imagery, sometimes the opposite. Sometimes something happens at the same time in the sound and the picture, but more often than not, different things are happening. And so it's always been the challenge, the fun part of creating fine art animations with music, audio visual music, whatever you want to call it. It's always been fun to consider the relationship either before I start the piece, or while I start the piece, or after I figure it out at the end of the piece, and just different relationships between the sound and the image. And that to me has been my approach over 20 years of working in the field. I think I'll call it there and take any questions if there are any, but thank you.
Dennis.
Yes.
Well, okay, let's see if at the end we have a few minutes for questions.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome, Micky. It's been a long time since we met in Vienna. I mean, I was talking briefly before you came online, all of you. I was talking briefly about the music marathon, the Sing Sound, the work of Mike, how he was participating also in several things related to understanding visual music, and of course, talking about Vienna and the Fulldome Festival too, Micky. So thank you so much for being here. And I can say a few words, or if you want to introduce yourself, as you prefer.
Well, you did some already. That's very kind. Thank you very much. And it's an honor to be in this circle of friends and colleagues and listeners. And yes, it was nice when you were at the Jena Fulldome Festival. And I'm a little anxious because I also intend to use a little keyboard presentation. If that works, we'll be lucky. If not, I'll just resort to storytelling and making you imagine the things that you don't see or hear. So, but good luck, we'll try. So without further ado, let me say that I'd like to focus a little bit, not just on the art of visual music, which has been demonstrated with my colleagues, but also about the venues and about the frames, the framework in which visual music can happen. And that's, of course, the Fulldome Arena, the planetarium, but it can also be in other places, and there may be also some synergies to be discussed, which I'm hoping I can do. So I've been carefully listening to the instructions on how to share the yes, I will trying to get into systems and
yes. Esa es la tela de él. Lo que vemos, el puntero de quién es, tuyo o de...
I need to allow Firefox.
Yes, you go to the lower part of the Meet, and you will see the screen, like a screen with an arrow pointing up.
Yes, I was there, and then they lead me into the jungle of system.
No, you
stuff.
should see like which window you want to share.
Opa, ele caiu.
¿Se cayó?
Aham.
I think it might be on Mac and has to reset.
Oops. Just two. We are disappearing. Going out.
Come back, come back.
What happened?
I think on a Mac you have to let the preferences in the system folder, in the system settings, allow Firefox to share the screen and stuff. Log back in.
Hi, Joseph again.
I don't even know why I left then. That was just.
I love Zoom. I love Zoom, and I didn't like. I was saying before, can we get a Zoom link? But I mean, was not possible in the university, so we needed to use Meet. Some universities are not allowing you to use any system you want.
No.
Micky was lost.
Come back.
She's lost in cyberspace.
Yeah.
Okay, somewhere. Okay, let's see. Let's give him a minute to see if he can reappear.
Vamos ver porque aqui a câmera está iniciando. Está dando até para nós, imagina para eles.
¿Cómo?
A nossa câmera está travada, imagina.
Yes, I don't know what happened because he's not coming back.
Não, aqui é.
Okay.
Ela pega e trava.
So we don't know what's going on.
Oh, here he comes.
Yes, welcome back.
Oh, what an achievement, just to let you know that it was a total failure. Again, you see, when I open this beautiful little icon share presentation,
you cannot
it doesn't allow me to share the thing, but
Micky, can you hear Micky? Can you hear me, Micky? Are you on a
I can.
Mac or a PC?
I'm on a Mac.
Okay, so I realized the very important sequence of events is click the arrow.
Hey,
Yes.
I think
So
you've done
sorry.
it.
Oh, now,
Okay.
and
we got it?
Finally, yes.
Thanks, heavens. So
We-
bear with me with old professors, not really versed in high text, but you see the image reflections on immersive media. I'm not so important to be seen, but you see that, which is great. Okay?
Mhm. We can see you as well, by the way.
You bear with me. So I go on share presentation. So this is a screen designed by the architect Karl Ludwig Schinkel for Mozart's famous opera, the Magic Flute. And this is the Queen of the Night doing her famous music. So funny, I think this is a beautiful backdrop for an opera, and it also kind of looks as if it could be inside a planetarium, which is where lots of immersive music is happening, as you know. So keep this in mind. This is 1814, and it's a beautiful way of anticipating Fulldome music, visual music in the dome. So now here we are. This is the Jena Planetarium. It's next year we celebrate its 100th anniversary. It coincides with the 20th anniversary of the Fulldome Festival, and so as Ricardo mentioned, I'm director of the Fulldome Festival. I've been doing this for the last 20 years, and next year we are very happy that the 20th anniversary of the Fulldome Festival coincides with the 100th anniversary of the Jena Planetarium, which was the first of its kind, and it was called. It just attracted people who loved to be in a state of wonder with technology, all kinds of technology. So it was a major thing, and as it's being built, and some of the first visitors who came to see this new invention, kind of projection in a dome, were the teachers of the Bauhaus. So maybe with a group of people that are down here, there may have been Walter Gropius, Molny Natch, and some other of the famous Bauhaus teachers, who of course were extremely interested to see a technological innovation in the neighborhood of Jena, in the neighborhood of Weimar, where the Bauhaus was located. And they had wild ideas about putting music and visual art and combining this with the technology of projection. Now, there was a bit of a historical gap because some right-wing politicians kicked out the Bauhaus, and so there was a gap. And yeah, you see, it's a major attraction. And of course, we know that 100 years after the Fulldome Festival, 100 years after the Jena Planetarium, you have the sphere, which is kind of the megalomaniac version of a immersive media, with U2 playing inside this magnificent sphere. I'll skip this because I want to go back to the Fulldome Festival and to the presentations that were going on in the dome, which is surround visuals. Some scientific presentations were still going on, but basically it was a way to bring the art of media and media, visual media, into a massive canvas that just happened to be a 360-degree hemisphere with a diameter of 20 meters. So I'm teaching immersive media at Bauhaus University, and as probably many universities know the routine that when students think about a multimedia Gesamtkunstwerk, they first think about the visuals, and there's sometimes very little time left to add the audio part. So in a semester that where I felt this has to be the other way around, we teamed up with the Musikhochschule Franz Liszt in also in Weimar, and we just asked our colleague from Franz Liszt University to give the students, to our students, just some musical pieces, and then let the students be inspired by the music and then create the visuals around it. So that was quite successful, and it basically shows that, as we know in the visual music scene, visuals and music have equal validity, and sometimes it helps to start with the visuals and have quality sound and audio design, but sometimes you just like to give the dominant feature to the sound, to put this on stage and then create some visuals around it. So we also combine this idea of music, presentation of visuals, and classical plays. And that was one that called Kometentanz. It was designed by a pretty crazy German poet, Paul Scherbart, before the First World War. And funny thing is, he commissioned, or let me say, Richard Strauss, then at the Wiener Hofoper, he wanted to make the music to this ballet, Astrale Pantomime. But the people in the Wiener Hofburg, then led by Gustav Mahler, they shied away. They said, this is too complicated to have stars coming down from the heavens and then and landing on the stage with dancers doing this pantomime. So that was a challenge for us. And so we thought, let's do what Richard Strauss and Gustav Mahler failed to realize. Let's put this on stage. And here's a little clip from how the music was created by a Colombian composer. And so we had some visuals that went along with it. And so what you see now, I don't know, can you also hear something?
No, and we did have sound from you when you showed the video of the sphere. We heard the sound then.
So there's no way you can hear the sound from this clip? Never mind. Imagine that this is a great piece of music that kind of substitutes what Richard Strauss did not make. And then also imagine that there are these dancers doing their choreography inside the planetarium. So this was a very daring way. It was already started in 2014, and we've upheld the tradition of presenting immersive music theaters in the Dome ever since. And so each year we had a new piece that brought this medium into the Dome, to the audience. Did you talk to me right now?
Vou ter que atualizar a página aqui, eu acho.
The audio from your side is a little dubious. Again, I'll just... What did he say? Since I can't hear the message that you want to convey, I'll just move forward. As I mentioned, I'm kind of, the Dome is my home, but it's not the only medium for immersive media and music. So some really time ago, that was in 1985, I was privileged to have a good friend, Jim Norman, and joined him in an expedition to play music with whales, orca whales, in the North Pacific off the coast of Vancouver Island. That's important, and bear with me, we come back to the dome eventually. But this intrigued me so much that I proceeded to create a immersive music installation, you may call it, called Liquid Sound, which brings people into body temperature salt water that has a very, very sophisticated underwater sound system. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to have people have the experience of what the whales have for 50 million years, and that is being in the sound medium of water and being exposed to the experience of listening with the ears under the water, and to have this in the most comfortable way. The water is body temperature, and it has some salt content, so you just effortlessly float and listen to the music. Now, that's we constructed these domes in 3 thermal baths in Germany, Toscana Thermen, and so for pretty obvious reasons, we had this venue in an architectural shell of a dome, and the more people floated in the dome, the more people yearned to have visual display up there. So we'll come back to that fantasy in a minute. So this is the Toscana Therme at night at the Liquid Sound Festival. And so that brings live performance on the stage, and it also brings some visual mapping into this into the spa venue. It's a festival that goes all night. It starts in the afternoon at 5 o'clock, and it goes through the whole night, and it only ends the next morning at 9 a.m. So it's really great to fall asleep in the water. The salt water makes you float, and nobody drowns. Everybody enjoys underwater music and visuals sort of projected into the ceiling. Here's a little clip from a musical performance that we just had recently. Again, I suspect that you don't hear the music, right?
Just barely, a little bit from time to time. No, just a few sounds here.
So this is just the music part, but if you look to the top right of the screen, you see a sphere. And when we have a full festival installation, we have a balloon, a 5-meter balloon, onto which we present the visuals, and of course, which go along with the music. But to get into the depth of why water and music and visual music are so closely linked. This is a friend of mine, and his system is called Plymouth Sven Meyer, and you may have seen systems like this. It's basically a membrane that transmits the sound onto a little petri dish filled with water. The camera catches the movements, and then you realize that all sound structures the water in the most beautiful way. So these mandalas that are created, they are not random. They are actually a function of sound being transmitted onto the water, or rather sound being excited, or sorry, water being excited by sound. And so that's a little demo tape here. And this is more than intuitive visual music. It is kind of organic visual music that relates to the physical interaction of sound waves onto water. And probably I hope you find it easy to imagine that this moving visual music imagery in real time is projected into the Fulldome. So the planetarium becomes the canvas for a real-time sound water symphony. And so this really is quite impressive for the audience to give it to give some sense of what visual music can actually be in real time. So I'll come to the fusion of two ideas. And this is a vision for the future. Unfortunately, it's not realized yet, but maybe for the next Understanding Visual Music conference, I can report progress. My idea is that we have a new kind of installation that has the liquid sound pool as for the underwater music, and a Fulldome planetarium is on top. So you have concert quality underwater music, and you have the visual music correlation projected into the dome that's on top of the people floating in the water. And this is something that I dare to describe in this handbook of research on the global impacts and roles of immersive media, together with co-author Kelly Francis. And it basically is, to me, the paragon, the synthesis for a venue that combines the best of visual music in the dry arena of a Fulldome venue, and the most fantasy-like music experience that comes with listening to the audio content through the underwater sound system. It's not trivial to build it, that's why it's not there yet, but it's also not totally unrealistic to combine these two technologies that have existed in their own already for 20 or 30 years. And so cross your fingers that this will be happening sooner or later, and I'll invite you all to the pool. So this is the link, the Fulldome Festival, that you can go to learn more about what's happening in the Fulldome Festival scene. And as I mentioned, we've, under the motto of 20 is the new 100, in July 13th to 19th, 2026. This is where two anniversaries will be rolled in one: the 100th anniversary of the Jena Planetarium and the 20th anniversary of the Jena Fulldome Festival. And I promise you this will have a complete new set of technology, of visual and audio technology in the Jena Planetarium. And it will have content provided by those. This could be any kind of submission, and visual music submissions are always very welcome. And it's a bit of a secret. There will be a totally new spatial audio system. So you'll have a new visual display system that will be installed there next year in the Jena Planetarium, with a totally new audio system. And that should make a real worthwhile experience. And so if there are any visual music composers or visual artists who consider submitting to the Jena Fulldome Festival, please keep this date in mind. The submission guidelines will be published a little later because we have to adapt our submission guidelines to this really new audiovisual system. The Jena Plan Channel will close for half a year to install this all, to install the new technologies, but it should all be ready in July 2026. And of course, I hope many of you will come and experience this. So that's as much as I wanted to share with you. I think I'll stop the screen share. Ooh, I almost made it. I almost made it with sound, but I hope you get some idea as to what these wild ideas are all about. But the visual music will always be very much in the center of my work.
Fantastic. Thank you, Micky. Thank you so much. Well, I need to say a few things. I mean, it was interesting to see that at the end you were talking about a little bit about a vision of the future, because we are running out of time. But if I would have one question, would be, okay, what would you be thinking in general, the full group, the four of you, about the future of visual music and all these things? Also, let me say in brackets that if you are going to change in the Jena Planetarium the technology for sound and visuals, when I was there, I remember that like a really fantastic visual system, and also an amazing sound system with, if I remember well, 64 speakers and 32 audio channels. So you don't find that in many planetariums around the world. Really, it was fantastic. So if you are going to improve that system, must be something really special. So fantastic. Those are fantastic news. Before to go, because we are just running totally out of time, you're exhausted probably after so many technical difficulties. In the middle of your talk, we also have some problem with the audio system here, but we realized to make it work again very fast. So I don't know if you have a very short comment out of what Micky was already saying about the future. If you have something to say about of visual music in Fulldome in particular, if you have any comments about what's interesting to hear also at the beginning, Mike, these networked ideas, how this could change things in the world of Fulldome. I don't know if you have something that you want to add about the future of visual music, especially in Fulldome, or could be not in Fulldome.
Yeah.
If you have any comments, yes.
Briefly,
Mike?
I think just in terms of following on from this great panel, for me, what has always been interesting is actually how all the technologies in Fulldomes in particular have separated out sound and image. The old server systems, they used to have 3 separate servers. One for Targa files, which were composed as before the video codecs. One sound server, and then a third server which synchronized them. And I think what we're really seeing is that that went out the window with all the new codecs and SSDs, things just faster, everything to put massive imagery with very complex sound onto an infinite screen. But there is still this kind of legacy of thinking that separates these two things out. So you look at the sound systems that exist. We've got a 10.1. The Market Hall's got a 19.1. SAT, I think they've got 132. Every single speaker configuration for a Fulldome is just massively different. But there are these software systems that are bringing them together to work much more effectively, so that there is this sort of synthesis of the two, and that's why I think your conference sort of predicts that even though it's based on this history, it's all coming back together again in the dome. Yeah.
Fantastic. Any other comment to add? Dennis?
particularly like to respond to your manifesto for the new listening space, Micky, and the pool, because I think it's an absolutely brilliant idea. I love swimming, I love water, but I think it's a couple of more serious responses to that. One is that, in my experience, the audience never really knows what to do in these big immersive experiences. They're kind of milling around. They kind of, am I looking up? Am I lying down? Am I sitting? And I think that solution of floating is just brilliant. But I also really responded to that idea that your little slogan, you want to be immersive, you have to get wet. Because I think something I've been thinking about a lot, not quite as literal as that, but I think sound has a really good role to play in immersive experiences because it does genuinely immerse you. You're not literally in water, but you are in a pool of sound where the sound is vibrating every single molecule in your body, actually, if we want to be really cosmic about it. And so I think extending that into this idea of floating in a pool is, yeah, I think that could really go places, that idea. Nice one.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joseph. Any other comment, Dennis or Micky or whoever?
I'm just, I was not familiar with the Fulldome or much of the immersive world, and I'm just so pleased to see the art form come out of the theater into the world, and all these different environments for experiencing music and sound to me are just fantastic, and I'm so grateful to have spent time and heard the presentations today to learn about these environments, and bravo and good luck with your work.
Thank you so much. So, I mean, just at the end, let me say that, we have been all pushing these ideas about visual music and Fulldome for many years. So for me, it's still running like the understanding visual music that started for me like an interest to understand visual music, to learn about it like many years ago. For me, it was great. And I have known not only the people who are supporting this here, I mean, Andrea, Mateus, and other people here that are helping us to put all this together. But I'm really grateful that, Dennis, you have come to, if I remember well, to Buenos Aires and also to Montreal. Yes, we put like programs of visual music marathon parts in the first Understanding Visual Music, not with a dome, with more traditional set. And Joseph, that was participating, Mike too, Micky didn't come, but I went to the Jena Festival. That was fantastic. So I'm really amazed that I have met you through the years, and we have been collaborating in different ways. I mean, every time I'm calling some of you, you are always there. Mike, you always say yes to everything that I'm inviting you, so that's fantastic. So I'm really, really, really grateful that you all have been participating on this. So sorry about the technical difficulties. Next time, I won't do it any other way than Zoom or something better. Yes, I love Zoom too. So thank you so much. I'm really, really grateful for your participation. Have been amazing all this.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Can I have a last word?
Yes.
I think it's so important to look at the future, and the future must be characterized by improvement of all systems. That's why it's an ongoing thing. But I think it's also, that's been mentioned, it comes back to the human ability to be synesthetic, to have those sense inputs not separated in the first place, in order to find out ways to fuse them together again. And of course, I think Joseph perfectly right. The water is a perfect medium to have this, to have those both vibrations embodied again and bring immersion to the body back in again, and try as good as we can to make the visual part technologically as good as possible. And Ricardo, the system in Jena, yes, until now it's 64 speakers. There may be more, but the controls will be very, very different and very radical, and a little close to what the holoplot is in the Sphere in Las Vegas. So we are working on perfection. and improvement of
Well,
perfection. Thank you.
fantastic. And it will be like the immersion of the Fulldome system and the immersion where it started, that was immersion in the water. That's the feeling to be immersed in a different world. So you're combining things in a very, very interesting way. So Micky, Mike, Joseph, Dennis, I'm really grateful once again. So one applause for you. So, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.